Amen. One other thing I'm going to do before I get into the message, I'm kind of entitling this. I'm not kind of, I am. I'm entitling this little talk, sharing. It's yeah, I'm entitled to it. No, I'm entitling it. A short term, but a look down the road for our nation. A look down the road for our nation. It's of importance, or I wouldn't be sharing it as far as I'm concerned. You may not feel the same way, that whatever, but I feel it is important, so I'm going to share it. I believe it'll make sense in the next few months, because I think we're looking at not years in this short-term look. I'm thinking we're looking at some months. So there's importance, I believe, in the warning that I got from the Lord. So there's a part of this that was literally like a interstate in front of me. Donna and I were traveling in some type of vehicle down this interstate, and we had to come to a halt and then move very slowly forward because of these multi and large potholes that were in the road in front of us. Let me say too, what I'm about to describe is dealing with economics and governmental issues, and then the governmental issues would include resources, finances, support, those types of things, from states right down to individuals. So the road was filled with potholes for some hundreds of yards. It was not lengthy. So what I'm describing is a short, difficult time in our nation. It's not the big one that has been foretold by the Lord, but it is short term, but not far in front of us. Does that make sense? So the roadway was filled with potholes due to the lack of them being addressed over the years. Potholes representing different things, some of different depths. I knew this. To go speeding through that area would be to blow out your tires and break your axles on the vehicle if you went fast. What was already slowed down became much slower, of necessity. That's an economic term. Again, this is not the big one. It may feel that way when you're in the midst of things like this, but it won't be. That has not been prayed away yet. And this that I'm talking about now is coming. There is no stopping it. So there was, because of the potholes, they were representing many things, including agendas, mismanagement, overspending, and the national debt out of control. But all triggered by governmental overreach and irresponsible and unlawful actions in various leaders. Lies, oppression, criminal actions will be a portion of why this stretch of the road is filled with potholes and the difficulties of the time. As I said before, slow down is a must. And that will be in various types of applications. Navigating will be treacherous but not impossible. Especially, I'll say this to God's people, to trust Him, to be led and directed by Him. So they'll be treacherous but not impossible. Not impossible for the righteous and the wise. Let's say it that way. So there was some statements that was said to me, and I'll come back to some more of this. As I was looking at this, these statements were made to me by the Lord. He spoke, he said, fractured functions. The breaking of structure in the nation like bones of support being broken. Secondly, functional disabilities, the restriction of an own movement within the nation, as well as progress. Instead, limitations. Lastly, disabling of functions, particularly important functions, as well as unnecessary functions. In fact, unnecessary functions, unimportant functions were leading to the disabling of important functions because they have robbed and drained the resources. There'll be no bailout this time. So there'll be a disabling of government functions, not all, but some. As well as disabling of certain businesses, disabling of supply and demand for short periods of time, some areas of the nation worse than others. So the demand of supplies will not be able to be met, part of that being to the lack of movement at times going on in the nation. Again, this will be short term, and it will then be better. But I say again, it's not the end, nor is it the big one that the Lord has talked and spoken about for years and foretold. Worse will follow what we're about to experience. And it will be, what I saw in this was national. The worse is international. But it's at a distance. The mercy of God is in this so that we can trust Him again, as we must always. And He is trustworthy. He will prove that to us. That does not mean, of course, that we will have it easy. Does not mean that everything will be great and taken care of. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what the Lord is saying. But we can trust Him. Right? And we'll be a great another, since 2008 and 9, since that time, when that was a hard hit upon the nation. That wasn't the big one either. But He will be trustworthy. Said this way, the fear of the Lord is going to need to be great in us and become greater in us. So let me finish up this part with reading a little bit more practical warnings and admonitions. More shortages in the supply and demand chain will occur due to interstate disruptions. Secondly, federal support will be small and at times non-existent, including the breakdown temporarily of monthly type checks. Thirdly, some states will be forced to provide for what the federal government cannot. Others will be unable because of their own economic issues. To have the Lord's wisdom in this time forth is paramount. I would advise strongly, if possible, for you who do not have Let's say it this way. If you're depending upon the supermarket, I would advise strongly that you store up at least a few weeks' worth of food. That's dialing it way back for me. I've had people say to me things like, well, Terry, I just trust in God. No, you're trusting in the system we have, and it's not trustworthy. And I don't need to store because I trust God. If you go back 100 years in this nation, that would be foolish talk. There were no supermarkets. We have built a trust in our system, and I'm telling you, it's going to be shaken. We're not trusting God, we're trusting we can go to the supermarket. And I'm just uncovering it in front of us. That lack of trust that actually shows. We're going to need to trust the Lord. Depending on where you live, things can be way worse than others, of course. If you're able to grow gardens, if you're able and have been able, if you have your own meat, those types of things, this will not be as big a problem for some as it will be for others. But I still advise you to store food and to read the Proverbs chapter 6, where even the ant knows enough to store. Right? Hello? For over most of the 6,000 years that man's been on this earth, except for the last less than 100 years, he had to store. We need to wake up. Our trust is in a system that's no longer trustworthy. Amen. Well, that's it. So that's it for now. There's another one coming called the Coming Deluge, but not for now. Thank you, brother. Is this about the coming deluge? Thank you, Mark. All right, so I hope you didn't get too frightened. The worst thing that can happen in this